Hello and welcome to episode 24 of HardcoreGaming101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively, definitively, and scientifically rank the games you nominate on Twitter. My name is Xerxes, and the only thing I want on my tombstone is pineapple. My panelists today are...
I'm Bobinator.
I'm Carl.
And I'm Satanga.
On this podcast, we have three rules. Why did I choose Irish? Rubial Hyde. All rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Dara Real. This is the hardest one I've ever done. Dara Real. You can nominate one game at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X. Triu Real. You can see the master list for yourself. Check it out at bit.ly/47kgames. And remember, if you want us to fast track the game you nominate, you should include it in a 5-star iTunes review. Do that, and we will get to it as soon as we possibly can. You'll be jumped to at the head of the line in front of all the other chumps. Okay, our next game is Commander Keen, Episode 1, Marooned on Mars. It was nominated by
Bruce Dance
on iTunes. It was developed by id Software and published by Apogee Software. The platform was MS-DOS, and its earliest release date is December 14th, 1990.
I should talk about some real quick with this game. This game, some of you, or most of you hopefully, are probably familiar with the concept of shareware, but this game is the first part of a trilogy. And I would technically consider that all three parts the same game, extended. But we're specifically looking at the first episode, the shareware episode, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they call it episodes, and it's referred to as Keen 1, 2, and 3. But they were made at pretty much the same time with the exact same...
I consider it all to be the same game.
More or less. But this is Keen 1. It's the game that... If you had a PC in like 1990, 1991, there was almost a 100% chance that Keen would have either passed through your hands or someone you knew was going to have Keen installed, because this game was pretty big.
Yeah, I'd like to plug, once again, Masters of Doom, which I mentioned back with our Doom talk, that a fair chunk of the book's devoted to its rise with Commander Keen, and, like, it was such a big seller for its time because there was no PC game like it at the time, and the shareware model is also a burgeoning matter as well. But, you know, it wasn't just their business plan they had for it. It was the fact that this game scrolled as smoothly as NES and arcade games did at the time. That was really unprecedented for
I would say that's being generous. I would say it fakes smooth scrolling.
It was a cheat, yeah. John Carmack had to figure out, I can't tell you the technical details about it, but he did something to, like, make the screen think that, like, the right side of the screen was the left somehow while walking, and he managed to play that off as smooth-esque scrolling.
I'd like to talk about why this is impressive for me.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at 1990, if you look at DOS specifically, action games were generally terrible. It was a system not really made for games, and you could do a lot with adventure games and strategy games and simulations so much, but platformers like this, it just didn't really work until now, because this was a game specifically made for the PC. They knew exactly what it could and could not do, and they worked with that.
It didn't even work after Commander Keen. Like, it was...
Everyone regards like Carmack as like a genius, especially at the time, because like he's like, oh yeah, no, I can just do it. Like seriously, that's basically what this guy was. It's like he would look at something and be like, oh, they can do smooth scrolling on a different system. Yeah, fine, I'll do it. Whatever, I'll get it done. And he did. And
he did, right.
And the companies after this were basically, they were either scrambling to kind of get the Keen engine off Apogee, like please give us, or ID, you know, they were trying to give us the engine. We need this to make our own smooth game, because the companies were playing catch up for at least a year or two on this game. And of course, id themselves would be like, oh, well, we'll just release a much better game a year later when they dropped Keen 4, which is kind of nuts if you think about it. Like that they pumped out these. It is hard to tell, but yeah, like as Bob said, you know, throughout the 80s, you had pretty much like singularly dedicated systems, you know, like the NES and even like and the Euro computers, like the Commodore 64 and stuff. These were all things that everyone had the same damn system. Like you didn't have to worry about like different resources and stuff. So you could really hack the thing together and make it do exactly what you wanted, hopefully. Whereas this was like, oh, everyone's got different IBMs, figure it out. And it's like, crap. And no one could handle that until id came out with this. And we're just like, yeah, it's smooth enough. And the levels are pretty big. It scrolls in all directions. It doesn't just go right to left or up and down. It scrolls in full 8 directional in any direction at any time. You can go all of the directions. The game shows that off because Keen has his, I'll say iconic pogo stick. I don't know if it's like I think he's the only character that really uses a pogo stick in gaming. Like most of them don't do that.
Well, only second in iconicism next to his Green Bay Packers helmet. It looks like.
Right. Yeah. He has his helmet and he has his pogo stick, and those are kind of like Keen's things. Yeah, and the pogo stick, I think, was. Did you say DuckTales? Right. Yes. Thank you.
Scrooge McDuck's Kane. Right. Of course.
Yeah. Kane. Right. Because it's not a pogo stick. And they did this. I think just to show off. Like, hey, look, we can. Because you jump on the pogo stick and you fly through the stages. Like, you go so high in this game when you use the pogo stick. And it's just them showing off. Hey, look at how smooth our scrolling is. Like, you can go to the side and up, and it doesn't matter. We don't care.
There's another thing about the scrolling that's kind of unusual. Well, that makes the game unusual. This game is very unlike Mario in that the levels are very non-linear. It's basically a big open maze that you can just travel in any direction. And I can't think of like any Nintendo games that ever did that.
I wonder if that's a Euro influence, since that was quite common in Euro games to do that.
It's a way of not designing levels.
Yes.
I'm not saying that to insult the game, but that is really what it is. It's like
this is definitely where we get to the we said like I've kind of front-ended deliberately like the Keen is really like pretty super important, but
it's a simulacrum of
it's old. Okay, that's a little mean to say.
We were talking about in last episode how a game like Metroid in 1986 could do vertical and horizontal scrolling, but it couldn't do them on the same thing. And, later NES games would definitely do that, and not too long afterwards. But to do it on a platform that was made to push out spreadsheets and stuff and not much else is another thing entirely. And I would also point out that a lot of the NES games that this was emulating, a lot of them started out on Japanese PCs or PCs that were popular in Japan, like PC-88 and MSX and stuff like that, and those games tried to do scrolling and it looked like garbage.
Seriously, like even really, the PC-98, the follow-up to those systems, struggled with scrolling. Like there's only a handful of decent scrolling games, and it was a more powerful system.
And more power, right? They were more powerful than this was designed to do, and it was designed to do it on a barely standardized platform as well. So, from a technical standpoint, I think you really got to hand it to Commander Keen and to Carmack in particular. As
not to undersell the id team, but there wouldn't have been an id without the kind of like
right. But I mean, let's not. Yeah, I mean, John Romero was also a technical genius and a he
understood intangibility about games a lot better than the rest of the team. Like he had a pretty strong ability to kind of conceptualize into an actually good game, I think. He was very important in that regard.
Also, gotta say that Tom Hall can't be underrated either, because he himself was actually the inspiration for Keen's design, the football helmet especially. Because back in id's Halcyon days, he just ran around the office with that helmet, spouting all sorts of crazy babble. He was a very fun guy, and Keen really is, I think, his game more than anything. Putting aside the code, it really has his personality and touch to it. And that's why he left id later, because once they shifted to more brutal games like Wolfenstein and Doom, he felt like he didn't really have as much of a place at the company anymore. But I'm sorry, I like speaking...
since we've got that segue, I should point out that our editor pointed out, Jeff pointed out to us that Tom Hall is actually making Super Mario Maker levels. Today, he actually makes Super Mario Maker levels. So if you have that game, definitely look up Tom Hall and check out his stuff there, because apparently it's pretty cool.
Are those the DOS style 2 of wide open, non-linear levels?
I haven't played them. I don't have that game, but Jeff does. I just wanted to plug that because he was very clear. He wanted to make sure that was mentioned. But when it comes down to Keen, the problem with Keen compared to Metroid, and even though it's only 4 short years later, Keen is not kind of like a groundbreaking game in terms of the actual game.
No.
I mean, it's like the overworld is pretty fun. I mean, I don't remember how many games had that overworld. I always liked the Keen overworlds. They added a lot to the games for me.
Cool. Yeah.
There's a weird thing about the overworld, actually. The thing is, you don't actually have to beat all the levels in this game. You need 4 parts to fix your spaceship, and you need to beat the levels that are blocking the way to the more levels, but that's it. There's a lot you can skip if you...
I always like that. Like, the game was like, hey, if you want to play all the levels, you can. If you don't, fine. Just beat the core game. I like that. I like that sort of the genuineness where it's just like, yeah, you don't have to play all the levels if you don't want to, which I think is cool. But the actual game is very... quite bare bones. You run around, you pogo stick around. Is this game? I'm just gonna have to double check. Does this game have keys in it that you have to collect to open doors? I think it does.
It does.
It does.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. I haven't played this game super recently, but I remember the keys.
DOS platformers are like the very few kinds of platformers that actually make you do that. Look for keys.
Yeah.
Honestly, to tie in with our last episode, I'd say this game feels more like Metroid than Mario at points.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the polar opposite in a way because everything is wide open, and with Metroid, it's very confined. It just keeps going and going and going, and you're like,
I really think
it's
this
kind of
game
exhausting in a way. This game is more
the engine.
Yeah.
I think is what they wanted to do. Like, all these other games are cramped and linear. Well, look at this. You can just jump all over the place, and it let them. This game is just full of kind of like pointless garbage. Like it's got the collectibles, like there's literally just hundreds of like just stuff to just collect in each level that gives you like 100 points or 1,000 points or whatever. And it's,
I mean, when we're going to move on to ranking it now. And as we do, I want everybody to think about if this were released for, say, the NES, pretty much as is, what would you think about it? Because it is important to look at it as a technical achievement, but it's really hard to recommend it to, especially when there's other Commander Keen games, of course, to look at. But it's really hard to recommend it, I think, to people who weren't playing it at the time.
We should probably talk about the flaws a little bit. I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say difficult. I mean, you can save the game at any point, which effectively gives you infinite lives. But the level design has a lot of things that will instantly kill you, and a lot of things will push you into those things that will kill you.
Yes, well, unlike a lot of other platformers, and despite the fact that Keen has a helmet, Keen does not have any life power-ups or any health bars. Keen touches anything that's hostile, blah, 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 blah. He falls off the level and you're dead. Which is, then you have to restart from the beginning of the stage. And
can you do that sound effect again?
Can you just cut it back in, like just
copy
and paste
it? I just want to hear you reproduce it.
Because I can't reproduce like any of the sounds I make. They're like one-offs, right? My brain deletes them immediately.
Can I try?
Yeah, go ahead. Wow, is that what I sound like? Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah. Never told me again.
It was a little off, but reasonable effects.
Well, we gotta put this somewhere. And
Keen, obviously technical achievement. I will say, it is quite nice looking as well. It might sound kind of like lazy, but it does look good as well. It's not like it's not like a monochrome game or anything.
Working with a very limited color palette.
The problem is that so many levels look kind of the same, but I guess you can forgive that for the
engine. I mean, they all look basically the exact same. If anything, one of the problems is that it's set on Mars, and every stage is just kind of like an interior like building, and it's kind of boring in that regard. Which later Keen games would solve, but not this one.
Right.
It also doesn't. A lot of platformers have bosses. This game has a single boss, and it's not a very interesting fight. So that's again, you get your little laser gun that stuns enemies. I think in this game it murders them, and they just kind of sit on screen dead, which was very important to.
It kills them in self-defense.
Yeah, but they're like these guys that are just like, I'm just walking here in my base, and Keen just like, screw you, and just murders them. Like that's.
I'm human. You're not. You're dead.
I think they're planning to invade the Earth or something. I mean, it's technically self-defense.
I'm thinking.
Keen's going to Alien Juvie for a long time.
I'm thinking right below Clash of Demon Head.
You know what? I was going to put it between Rainbow Islands and Revolution X, but I think I could be okay with that below Clash of Demon Head.
If one more person agrees, this is over.
I don't disagree. Why would I disagree? This game is a super important game.
Hang on, I haven't said my piece.
Yeah.
I almost want to rank this higher for what it did for PC games, because Metroid from last episode got a lot of praise for how high it ranked for trend-setting entire genre.
This game does not set trend. It sets
this game
not
is
a single
technical
trend.
achievement.
Yes.
It's not a good game. Well, it's not a bad game. It's a very middling game, especially to replay.
I would disagree with Bruce about it doesn't set trends. Look at how many games like it followed it, like Duke Nukem.
But they were following. Were they following Commander Keen, or were they following the games that Commander Keen was following? Like,
I think
can do this?
They were basically
All right.
kind of. They were following a sort of like Commander Keen could do this, so we're going to do this because it's physically possible on the system. I don't think anyone really wanted to make that kind of game necessarily. They're just like, we can physically do this, so let's make it.
Let me put it this way: Electroman is better than Commander Keen.
Ooh. Oh, I would rather play Keen and Electroman. I gotta tell you.
Electroman was fun for me in a way that Commander Keen just could not accomplish.
Keen is definitely a fun game if you were playing it in 1990 and didn't have access to
really
NES.
hard. It's kind of like how, in a way, the version of Tetris that I could play on my graphing calculator in middle school is the best game ever because I could play it while other people were doing schoolwork. But it's not the best version of Tetris, nor is it even the best,
I mean, one of the discounted things about Keen 1, and I think this is important, Keen 4 was released pretty much exactly a year later. Keen 4 is basically could easily be put on like the SNES or the Mega Drive, and you would be like, this is still a great game. You can't say that about Keen 1. You can't put Keen on one of those systems. You'd be like, this is B, maybe high C at best on those systems. So, I'm not too opposed to this. As long as people understand, we love, Keen's great, but it's not the greatest.
I don't dislike it at all. And I don't think that we're doing it any disservice by saying whatever I just said right below Clash of Demon Head.
Well done. You can say whatever you want, but
I will say that there's not a lot of reason to play the initial Keen trilogy.
Right.
The latter trilogy
leaps beyond in every possible way.
Yeah, 4's my personal favorite. I grew up playing that one a lot. It still definitely does have its problems, and I never beat it. These games are really freaking hard, by the way. I'm not sure if we mentioned that. Or at least I found them really difficult because they're not very forgiving. They don't really give you a lot of continues, if any. Oh, it's been a while since I played them. But the original Keen, it started its own series. That much I can say for it, but there's not a lot of reason to go back to it, so most examination of it is historical.
I mean, yeah, you know what? id Software, classic id Software. We all love you. You've got big fans here on this podcast. Please donate to patreon.com/HG101. Next game is God Hand, which was nominated by @TenguGemini and @SoutheastPaw on Twitter. It was developed by Clover Studio and published by Capcom for the PlayStation 2. Its earliest known release date, according to the internet in its infinite wisdom, was September 14th, 2006. 2006? Wow, that's late.
It's a late runner, yeah.
I believe didn't Clover Studios shot like 2 days after that, so cheers to that.
This is for better or worse one of those swan song games for development team under Capcom that a lot of people like, but they didn't really get too much time to flourish. I mean, Clover Studio also known for the awesome platformer beat 'em up Beautiful Joe and the fantastic Zelda-esque beautiful exploration game Okami. I've got to admit,
and much like Okami, no one played God Hand. They just talked about that they played God Hand.
I forget why I actually really got into it. I think it was through word of mouth that I've heard that this was an amazing game that no one else was playing or talking about.
I got into it because you told me about it. That's how long we've known each other.
Wow.
Not 2006. I think it's more like 2008, but still.
Yeah, that's
still
time.
That's nuts. But
I feel old.
Yeah, so I mean, God Hand is it's a beat 'em up, and it's really like the most beat 'em up that could physically exist. Like, you if you removed everything but the beat 'em up from this game, it would be 95% the exact same game.
It's also probably pretty much the best Fist of the North Star game we'll ever make.
Yeah, there should be a better Hokuto no Ken game somehow. Like, the closest below this I'm thinking is that fighting game that Arc System Works made based on the series. But, for as much as that's worth, God Hand even blows that out of the water. I mean, I gotta admit, I'm probably going to be this game's, biggest driving advocate because I just got so much playtime out of it. It's one of my favorite things to play on the PS2. It's one of those obscure choices that I put on a top 100 personal list if I had the means, but I am getting a little ahead of myself. Basically, the setup has this drifter by the name of Gene who just beats the crap out of demons because a girl, Olivia, tells him to, and he has this magical hand that, his old arm got sliced off by a trio of no-goodniks who are also bosses in the game that you fight later. And then Gene himself, he gets this awesome god hand from Olivia that imbues him with super power, and in the game itself is an invincible mode where you're super powered for several seconds and you really get to thrash the enemies while that's active. But there's not a lot to the story, but whatever story there is, I think is better than something like Gears of War, which just tries to be all grim and po-faced about how it tells things. God Hand, no. It knows what it is. It basically has Gene meeting all these really, really weird enemies. One of the main enemies of the game is a gigantic, for some reason, Hispanic demon by the name of Elvis, who's he's fat and bald, but he nonetheless wears a white spandex suit, and his music theme when you fight him has some Elvis impersonator going or something like that. That's just a small taste of how completely audacious this game is, and I love it because of how ridiculous. Its setting is a gigantic mishmash of all sorts of things, like westerns, sci-fi, maybe a little bit horror film in there, demonic lore, and it just comes together in this gigantic mishmash of awesome action.
It
God.
Definitely feels Japanese comedy, slapstick, parody, all the different words that you would describe to a mishmash kind of thing that, you do see elements like this, and it is a Shinji Mikami game, and he's a big fan of sort of general B-gradeisms, I think, since they crop up a lot in his games.
Evil.
When this game came out, I'll be honest, this used to be the funniest thing ever for me, and maybe not so much anymore, but I do appreciate how goofy it is just all the time. It pretty much rarely, if ever, takes itself seriously, and I love that.
Yeah,
I would say it's kind of a companion piece to the original Devil May Cry Dante, and maybe even just keep going in the franchise, where it's just it doesn't take itself seriously, and it doesn't expect you to take what it presents seriously. It's all just hanging stuff that's just kind of stuff happens because you want to punch things. Here's just go punch it.
Yeah, no,
and kick it. You get to kick a lot, even though it's called God Hand. You do a lot of kicking.
What's the main thing that is there a mechanic to this game that you think people should really know about that would sell them on the game if they haven't played it yet?
There are actually quite a few mechanics to take in mind. What would be the most valuable? Well,
the most important thing, I think, in this game is that it introduces or has a context-sensitive kind of mode. So instead of kind of relying on setting a bunch of attacks, even though this game does let you build your own combo systems. Like you can assign different attacks to each button and you unlock attacks as the game progresses. This game has a roulette system called it's a God Hand Roulette or something. I can't remember the exact.
God Reels, I believe.
God Reel, thank you.
Those are basically your special attacks that you bust out when things get really hairy.
They're not just like screen clearers or anything. You've got like a chain ability that pulls enemies towards you. You've got attacks that hit enemies away from you. You know, you've got like this. It's kind of like combining a lot of different like moves. So instead of having to hold like R1 and waggle the controller and press square and do a backflip, you just press the God Hand button and then you can choose like a bunch of different abilities really quickly, which is kind of neat and definitely was pretty interesting for this sort of game to add a little bit of depth to what you do.
There is one thing I'd like to complain about that thing. You do get new moves and new super moves, but eventually you get to the point where you find things are just clearly better, so you eventually have a point where you don't really want to use anything else. Which kind of cuts down on strategy a bit, I'd say.
I will admit that your default combo, for the most part, is pretty much what you can go with throughout most of the game. Thing of it is, in between every level, it's like you get gold, actually, for beating the snot out of enemies and finding them in barrels and such. And you can actually, between every level, you go to this magical casino dimension where you can actually gamble on like blackjack and roulette and whatever to get more money. And then there's also a shop in this realm where you can purchase like more life bar, more God Reels and all that. More even basic moves that, like, you know, it gets all sorts of bat fists and spinning kicks and whatnot. But unfortunately, and I want to say there's a lesson somewhere in this, the fancier moves usually don't work out to your favor because reality sets in while Gene's twirling around like an idiot trying to set up some, like, I don't know, inverted backward flying knee strike. He's going to get his ass kicked right out of his animation by enemies just walk right up and punch him.
Right, we should talk about something for a bit. This is a very difficult game, and I'm pretty sure they marketed it as saying such. Like, they were aware of it.
Yeah.
And you can't really avoid it, and this game's great because if you play really well, the game just kicks your ass more. Like, it's a very strange game.
It has a sliding difficulty system.
It's like It's like the Xanac of 3D beat-em-ups for the PS2.
Oh my god, that's a brilliant comparison. No, that's pretty accurate. Actually, a lot of video games actually do this. A lot of old arcade games. I've learned recently, like from like one Credit Clear players, that old arcade games really want to cheat you over, and they just, without telling you, just increase the difficulty if you're doing well so that you eventually have to continue. And maybe God Hand isn't quite that malicious. At least it's being open about the fact that the difficulty changes on you. Indicated in the lower left is a skull that changes color depending on what level you're at. At first, it's level 1. You do well. Level 2. It doesn't go beyond level 2 if you pick easy mode, actually. Then up to level 3, which should be manageable. But if you do really well, it goes up to, and I'm not kidding, level die. Level die. The game is not being subtle about what it wants to do to you. Although, the thing is, you do get more money if you can do well at higher difficulties. So, you know, if you are super pro enough, then the game will reward you for managing to keep up with die for so long. That being said, as you get beaten up, your level does drop down, and there is actually a way...
You do have to be careful because... level die, you can get killed in like literally a hit or two. So
depending on what
if you aren't careful, you'll very rapidly get out. Like if you're pretty good at the game, you might accidentally get just outside of your like skill level, and then it'll just destroy you like in seconds. You're just like smack, smack, you're dead. Good pun with level die though, because obviously 4 in Japanese can mean death. So that's really cool. Nice pun.
Right.
Wow.
Very
I
good
never actually realized that. Geez. Thanks for pointing it out.
She is, it's a homonym for death.
Gotcha.
That's very cool.
That's why you don't, and in fact, it spreads so far into their culture that even numbered things are also considered unlucky for the same reason.
Yeah,
because
they don't have
a
fourth floors over there at hotels like we don't have 13th floors in really old hotels.
But they've got a good reason for it. Nobody can explain. My theory about why 13 is unlucky is because cavemen would get into fights because it was hard to divide. It's like, we've got 13 eggs.
We should talk about the combat mechanics a bit, because
sure.
Clover has always been kind of about their combat mechanics first and foremost, and they kind of mold everything around it, sometimes to the detriment of everything else, like in this case, level design. It's not the prettiest of PS2 games, but it kind of makes up for that with the gameplay.
The interesting thing about it is I guess we should very much say this. This is a game that you play with tank controls, which is a unusual choice at the time and still. And also the right stick, instead of controlling the camera or the character or anything like that, well, it kind of controls the character. It's like a dodge thing, where right stick is just auto dodge. Whichever direction you press, you dodge in. If you press forward, you do a really cool, sort of like standing, you know how like in anime where the character just moves slightly and then the punches miss? You do that when you press forward. You just move slightly and the enemies will miss. That
forward dodge is really the key to avoiding a lot of punishment. I actually can avoid like half the attacks in the game by just spamming them and then countering at the opportune time. But then there are attacks that are more telegraphed. Generally, you have to use a side roll dodge to get out of their way. But the game will beat you down a significant amount at first, but it is one that you can definitely learn about the ins and outs as you go on. And, so something I've learned is that you want to throw out a guard breaker, which, you hold back and press square. You want to throw out a guard breaker, every 2 or 3 punches, because enemies block a lot in this game, and you want to try and take advantage of that by keep throwing out guard breakers, and if you do break their guard, you actually do, while they're stunned, you do additional damage for a while, and set them up easier for a stun, where whenever you get a circle prompt and you get to punch or kick them really fast, you're totally invincible throughout all that. But then there's a move that you get later that I don't want to get ahead of myself. Cal, you want to explain more about the mechanics?
Well, I mean, don't get too deep into the mechanic because this is not this is not the God Hand strategy guide. There's plenty of those online, thankfully.
Yes.
This game is definitely, as Satenga is kind of going off on, this game is a game that either it demands that you master it and you play it exactly as it wants you to play it. It's kind of a hallmark of Clover and later Platinum games, and it can be pretty frustrating for first or second or third time players to actually kind of wrestle the game to now I finally get how it wants me to play this game. Because if you don't play this game the way it wants, it's just going to kick your ass. And it kind of doubles down on that because as the infamous IGN review pointed out, your health does not recharge between stages, which that's really mean. That is incredibly mean.
I'll admit that is pretty unnecessarily harsh, but then again, if you have to continue, you do so with full health and generally not at too much penalty, although that begs the question, why didn't they just revive your health, if not just for convenience? Look, I will admit, as much as I love this game and as much as I gush about it, I do have to admit, it is a little sloppy underneath it all. There are just these little imperfections in design that I feel could have really been touched up. This game, I mean, coming right from Okami to God Hand is, even I have to admit, a step back, at least in presentation terms. Maybe it was indicative of Clover's eventual crumbling. But
if I have to make one complaint, just real quick, I'd say this genre is just not meant for tank controls. Maybe if you had a quick turn button, it would help. But the issue is that you often have a point where you're just fighting one guy and trying to get him as fast as you can. But then you've got 2 other guys just going in behind you when interrupting what you're trying to do.
Fortunately, the game does give you a radar, which is unusual for a beat-em-up. That does show you where enemies are, so you do have a 360 awareness constantly on screen if you're paying attention, but it's very difficult to kind of flip between multiple things at once. Now, the problem is, again, the non-beat-em-up bits are really kind of weird and waffly. You kind of have to go do there's a level that you have to run around and beat up obelisks for no really discernible reason. You just kind of go like there's filler in this game, and it's quite a long game, which is odd because it doesn't feel like it needs to be that long. It feels like you want to just replay it several times, and it's just kind of like, well, instead it'll be long, and also you can set yourself up to lose, basically.
Speaking of long, we have been talking about God Hand for a long...
I have an idea where to rank this, if you guys want to hear it.
Bob, before you do, I just wanted to clarify, there is a quick turn. It's the L1 button.
Okay, I wish I had known that earlier.
Get trashed, Bob. Put it on the list.
Well,
the secret is almost every Mikami game that is tank controls has a quick turn button. It's just hiding there. You just got to find it. Like, all of them have it, but it's neither here nor there.
I'm thinking between Ikaruga and Bushido Blade.
That is not far off from what I was thinking. I'm curious what other people are going to say.
As I said, I think God Hand is a good game. I think it's a game much like, not necessarily like Bushido Blade, but it's a game. It's an enthusiast's game, a little bit like Ikaruga, I guess. Where if you love beat 'em ups and you want this kind of really visceral core beat 'em up, you're gonna love this game. Like, there's nothing that we can say that will make you not love this game. But to anyone else, you're going to be like, no, I don't want this.
It's definitely not a game for everyone. It is too tough, and the controls certainly are weird. It takes a lot of practice to really learn the ins and outs. So I have to realize it's not going to be, hanging up around Bionic Commando or what have you. But I just really like it. Even if not a lot of technical power was put into the graphics and whatnot, there was a lot of heart put into it, I think. And, Clover died to bring us this game. And then they argued,
but they were reborn as Platinum, and I think Platinum pumped out. Honestly, Platinum took this game in many ways and kind of upgraded it and spun it around and made it.
I can see how this became the core of Bayonetta or Vanquish or what have you.
One thing before we all agree, because I think we are actually agreeing in that particular placement. This is something that it's more of a slightly personal thing, but this game makes you press the buttons too much. That sounds insane, but I have.
You're not wrong.
It makes you press the buttons too much. Shake my cane at you.
Yeah, I do need a cane. I have slight issues with my right hand, my right arm. So when a game is like, mash the button 3 billion times to finish the level, I'm like, no, please stop, for the love of God.
I really do. I'm not joking.
You have the you have the spank move, the stomp move. All of these moves could have just been like finishes. Instead, it's like, you don't ever get a break. You just got to keep smashing the button. It's like, oh my God, it's really fucking bad.
I see it as being cathartic, but I can understand why it would really take the energy out of other people. Let's just say, all in all, God Hand is going to only appeal to a very specific, insane group, of which I am one of them.
I like Hybrid Heaven better, but this is the closest. Next best thing.
I do really like Hybrid Heaven. It's a hard call.
Actually, Hybrid Heaven doesn't make you mash buttons, so in that regard,
it doesn't. It's great, but it is very similar to God Hand. It's just playable.
It's weird if you actually put them next to each other, how similar they are.
Even the protagonists kind of look the same.
The whole thing is awesome. I love both games a lot.
It really pushes this small target audience, and you're gonna love it if you're in that audience. Otherwise, you're gonna not. And where was it? Under Ikaruga, was it? Or under Bushido Blade?
Between Ikaruga and Bushido Blade.
I'm fine with that. Everyone else?
All right, we're done.
I like it.
Our next game is Glover, which was nominated by At Range Island. It was developed by Interactive Studios. It was published by Hasbro Interactive. For the Nintendo 64, its earliest known release date is October 13th, 1998. 1998. It looked like a 6 for a second there.
Very impressive. It was a 6.
Yeah, it would be very impressive. Okay, so the N64 is a console that was ostensibly designed for 3D platformers, but most of them on there, other than Mario 64, were actually developed by Rare, and they were like collect the jiggy type platformers, which I like, but will admit that it was kind of played out by 1998. And Glover's different.
Genuinely
it's
never liked
not
it.
the same type thing. So you control, instead of controlling a person, you control a hand, a disembodied hand.
You control the titular Glover.
Yes, indeed. And but the kind of twist to this game is that although the glove person can run around and stuff like a regular 3D platformer kind of protagonist, the game is really about moving this ball around.
And it is really about moving this ball. This game is like a game-long escort mission about babysitting this physics object.
Yes.
But I got to give it credit because this game has the most ball slapping of pretty much any game I've ever played.
We all love. Wait,
Even
no, we
Shroker?
don't.
All right. Well.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, let's. All right. Can that be our last testicle joke for the
First and
show?
last.
Okay. So,
Well, I can't make any promises because it's all about balls. But
yeah,
I have not honestly thought of this game in a perverted context, and considering how much of a troll I tend to be,
either.
I'm surprised
I think
about that.
we might be.
no, it's a
losing
very
our
it's a very lighthearted, innocent game.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Glover himself doesn't talk, or itself. It's
There's one thing real quick. There is one thing about this game I find kind of spooky.
Yeah.
When you go into the hub world, it's like this post-apocalyptic-esque red sky with like nothing but the sounds of evil laughter and wind blowing, and it's kind of dark.
It is.
Yeah,
it is
like,
Land of
the
Winds and
intro of
Ghosts.
the game is like this wizard, and he's like using his gloves to make a potion, and then somehow his gloves fall off, and then everything explodes, and whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's like, what the hell was this guy making? Like the end of the universe spell, and it's like, oh crap. And then you got to collect balls for some reason. Like that's the plot.
Moving the ball around is kind of interesting because you can slap the ball and you can bounce the ball, and
You have a lot, like, you have a surprisingly, it's actually overwhelming. I often got kind of turned around with what button I was trying to press. You can slap it, but you also can kind of aim it, slap it, and you can also upward slap it, and you can aim it, upward slap it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like a pool game, like a billiards game, mixed with a 3D platformer. It's like Super Mario 64 meets Minnesota Fats Pool Legend.
I want to correct something real quick.
Go ahead.
I would not say this game is that much like your usual N64 3D platformer. It's not about collecting stuff. It's a pretty standard point A to point B kind of puzzle platformer.
I would
is.
disagree.
Well, there is a
Like,
collection element in
you
it.
have
but
to collect those things to unlock all the levels.
the bonus.
What do they call
in
this game?
Garibs, I believe. That's a weird game.
Yeah, I think it's a joke. I think they call them Garibs because it sounds like garbage, and it's kind of like just random crap that you collect. I think they're going with that, but yeah. So each stage is presented in. It's like a little tiny stage. You just you go from a hub world to a sub-hub world, which is the collection of levels with a theme. The themes are like Roman Greek-esque, circus, kind of like pirates and jungle, I think. I didn't get any further than that, so for all I know, the other stages are, let me just throw out a random guess, space and I don't know, popcorn machine. Let's go with that and hope that I'm right.
I can dig it. Is he right?
I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know where that.
Well, we
came
know the
from.
popcorn machine is wrong, but does Glover go into space?
I really hope so.
I think that is actually the final level. I want to say that giant robot of some sort is the final boss. Like two robots, and then one of them is piloted by your arch rival Cross Stitch, the other wizard glove who fell into the vat. Cross Stitch is basically like your Liquid Snake for this game. He's your.
I wish they had gone with an odd job pun for Cross Stitch and called him Hat. Yeah, you can cut me off there.
Callie, you're being way too enthusiastic about this game. I hate to tell you.
I actually really, so before I kind of, and I think we're going to get to that pretty soon, before we kind of slander this game because it's not actually it's got some big problems. I want to say I really, really like that they tried something really cool with this game. You know, like the whole you like the actual moving around is kind of cute, kind of fun. The character of Glover himself is actually really well done.
Very
like,
well animated, yeah.
So much personality. He's really cute because when he walks, his like butt kind of jiggles, and it's really funny, and it's so like lighthearted, like moving around. When you try and go off like a ledge, he actually sits on the ledge and just sort of looks around, like, you know, like kind of enthusiastically just hangs out on this ledge until you tell him to jump off it.
Makes me wish there was a Glover animated series.
I've never been so attracted to a 4-fingered glove before.
It is weird that he's 4-fingered. Like they just like, it's 4 fingers because it's easier. It makes sense. Don't question it.
If he got a third finger, then it's kind of like he's got like this big swinging glove dong, you know? Because it's like, how do you walk with?
I know they made it 4-fingered because they were.
It's like it just doesn't. Light. I don't think it works like from an animation standpoint.
No, it definitely works, and the way he crawls is really great. Like he lies on his back and kind of crawls forward like a hand. It's really nice, like really cool. Clever stuff.
Yeah. What is that? There's a Mickey Mouse cartoon where his gloves come to life, right?
Doesn't that happen in Fantasia, or does that not happen in Fantasia?
Well, the brooms come to life in Fantasia,
yeah.
But I think it's the one where he goes into like he jumps through the mirror and has like the dream where he like fights like the little miniature things on the other side of the mirror. I think he fights a glove on that one.
Cool.
And that's maybe I'm misremembering this, but
can I mention something else I like about the game's design? It does have some really chill music. I thought like the first track, 1-1, I guess you could say, reminded me of Massive Attack for some reason, like some, you know, mid-90s trip hop that was just, I mean, this is quite a British game, so I guess it's appropriate.
Boy, the music is great. Like, It genuinely is. Like, almost everything. The Pirates level 1 theme, not so good. It sounds like Jolly Roger music played on a xylophone. It sounds really stupid, but
but I gotta.
It's exactly that.
Oh my god!
Can I talk about my issues with this game real quick?
Okay.
Yeah, let's get.
If we're going to get to the issues, I do have a really big one, but Bob, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, let me go first. Okay, like I said, this game is about carrying a ball from one end of the level to another. And the problem is you really do have to babysit this ball because it can take damage and it can die. And you can lose it where it falls off a cliff and you just die because apparently Glover just loses the will to live, I guess.
Well, it's great because the game is designed so if anything happens to the ball, you lose a life and have to go back to the checkpoints, which are not too far spaced out, but they're not super close. And you have very limited lives. If you die and you lose all your lives, the game boots you out of the game, and you have to continue from your last save, which will be the last time you beat a level, essentially. And yeah, like the stages are like really not big. You know, like there's lots of thin platforms and small spaces that you kind of have to maneuver through. And then there's just like cliff and you just fall and you just lose. And it's like, you want me to roll a really awkward to control kind of physics heavy ball around a level. It's like playing Marble Madness if you had to follow the exact track perfectly or you lost instantly. Like that's essentially what the game is demanding of you. And if you accidentally leave the ball on like an edge, I think it can roll off and you just lose. So don't do that.
There was this one point in the carnivals, there's like this moving platform that goes up and down. And it took me like 10 tries to get the ball up there because it just kept rolling off over and over. And it just annoyed the crap out of me.
This is a game, like, you remember like the irritating stick game or whatever, where you have to try and precisely, it's an old-timey carnival thing also. You have to try and navigate like a thin metal bar between a pair of metallic thingies, or and you get shocked if you touch the edges. This entire game is like that, but like you have absolutely no control on your stick. That you're trying to guide a damn ball with the appropriate physics through just like all sorts of bottlenecks and whatnot. But like I do have a really specific main issue about the controls themselves, if I may. When you're not on the ball, jump is A. When you're on the ball, jump is B. This is unacceptable. I got confused so much.
You know what else
That is
game
a
does?
huge problem.
While I had it. Oh my god, just...
Well, this is great because you've led on to another issue, which is the game has lots of water. And to keep the logic of the game consistent, when you get in water, Glover hops onto the ball and, does that, backwards paddle
Like
thing.
a log rolling, lumberjack
Yeah.
games type thing, yeah.
Yeah, but the controls reverse. And they reverse
Kills
instantly on you. So you're like, if you accidentally enter water, Glover can go into water, flip, and you're like, oh crap, and you'll actually go backwards and you can get out of the water. So you're just like, come on.
Yeah, it's
I
like
just want to go in the water.
The very first set of levels apparently has an Atlantis theme to it, which means you're going to be dealing with a lot of water really early in the game. It's like, oh, hey, kids, play the tutorial. You can bounce around, do all these moves. Ha ha ha, fuck you, you're not doing that. Have all this water, enjoy.
The tutorial is literally one of the only parts in the entire game where you're in a nice closed-in area where you can't screw up and lose the ball. Almost every other level takes place in ambiguous sky where everything is going to be horrible and fall off. And the game is full of enemies the further you get into it that just immediately throw the ball off the edge. Seriously,
you're not really made to fight a lot of them either. The ball slap takes a whole second to set up, and some bullhead, miniature bull could just bum rush you and pop the ball before you even get to do that.
You can change the ball to the it's the bowling ball. It's got a few different modes, and I think it can't be hurt. It may be in the bowling ball mode. I'm not 100% sure.
That reminds me of something. You can change into a bigger bowling ball, some sort of smaller pinball or whatever. It can also change it into a crystal. I did this, and then I slapped the ball, then it hit a wall, it shattered, and I died. What the fuck? Why would they even allow that?
I don't
if it's
know what
just
the
an
point of that
instant
is.
lose button? Is there some sort of esoteric purpose for this?
One more thing. I want one more thing to say real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
There are two things I think they could have done to make this game a lot better. One, this is kind of a thing for N64 platforms in general, so I guess it's not more forgivable. Infinite lives, that's a big thing. I guess you could fake that with a Game Shark, but two, this game needs a button just summon the ball to you, just bring it back to you. That would save on so much frustration.
That would make a big difference. I don't know whether it would make the game too different, but yeah.
The game doesn't need to be too different to be significantly better. It was just this game is so punishing for what's supposed to be a fun, lighthearted platformer, and it's just so cruel. Okay, there's a little asshole enemy that's basically like a Chomp or a Bow Wow from Mario. If you get close to this guy, he will immediately hit the ball off the edge. Just immediately. That's what he does. And they're hiding in crates and stuff, and it's Jesus, everything in this game is... There's a chicken that steals the ball and rolls away with it. It's cute and clever, but it's also incredibly frustrating. I put it above Bugs Bunny and Rabbit Rampage.
I was going to say between Rainbow Islands and Revolution X.
I would also... I second Bobinator.
Okay. You guys can put it high if you want. I actually do like Glover a lot. I just hate the game is just an unending torment.
As somebody who doesn't really hold a lot of love for this game coming in, I might want to lowball a little more. How about between Haunting and Riven? I don't know. Is that?
I would rather play Glover than Riven, but
of course, because we all hate Riven. Oh, well, I did place it higher than Riven, so.
I mean, you guys, look, I mean, the thing is, Glover is a game that gets more frustrating the further you get into it. That's true. The problem.
I think it does definitely have a lot of personality and a pleasing aesthetic quality.
I wish Glover was a great game.
Yeah, I do.
That's a good way of putting it. It's just... Oh.
And that makes it... I think that's a good reason to rank it lower in a way, because it's such a cool idea that is spoiled by execution. That's a problem.
I'm going to dock it down even lower. How about between Mega Man 02 and the New Zealand story?
That's cool. I mean, New Zealand story is another game in a line of, oh, it's cute. Oh, this game is, oh my god.
That's what I thought of when my eyes came across the New Zealand story just now. So
okay, that's where we're going to put it. Done.
You okay with that, Bob?
Works for me.
That's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to at Tengu Gemini and at Southeast Paw, at Range Island, and They Call Me the Swede on iTunes for nominating those games. Thanks as well to those of you who haven't gotten to yet. You are on the list, and we are making our way down that list. Thanks to my co-hosts and compatriots, to our editor, Jeff Rude, to our theme song composer, Miteki, and of course, thanks to the support and feedback of listeners like you. You could support this podcast by going to patreon.com/HG101, making a small monthly donation. I know I do, and I'm sure these guys do too. You can also help us out by following at GC9X and at HG_101 on Twitter. But most importantly, help us claw our way into the podcasting firmament by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101's podcast, and giving it a 5-star review. Remember, include a game in that 5-star review, and we will have to play it and rank it immediately. Do it, or we'll make you listen to our theories on how Commander Keen is totally actually an older Doom guy. No, seriously, they never said it wasn't, so it must be true. Until next week, keep keeping it real.